Welcome back to The Secret Stash. I'm really excited to bring this episode to you. So I'm talking with Jesse Ibanez, who's an old friend from many, many years ago, out of San Diego, runs a company called the Greenhouse Group, and one of the most enlightened, visionary real estate companies I think I've ever had the pleasure of getting to know. And Jesse's brilliant. So we thought it'd be fun to talk about different market practices, just in general, but particularly around this whole COVID-19 situation. And that's it. So for the first time in a long time, I'm going back to Cali with my friend Jesse Ibanez. Enjoy the episode.
Okay, let me drop this in, brother. I can't wait. And thanks for doing this too. I'd love, this would be cool, little thing we could dip into if it makes sense to do so. I love the extemporaneous nature of it. Like, hey, Chuck, I got a hot one, dude. You got 5. Come on, to get your take,
Yeah.
Cool. So the thing was, Canada is seeing home prices. I didn't actually write down where I actually got this, but I came across the hot wire. Prices of houses selling twice as much as the previous year, despite everything, that's been going on, right? And then like your take, brother, on the front line of, is that like an actual thing that's completely true? Or is that like one of those really cool, like, man, wouldn't that be great in the vacuum of things that were, and then the lagging indicator, but the leadings are telling something different. So what's going on up in your neck of the woods, brother?
In our neck of the woods, I don't think that's true. I don't want to, if it's out there, I'd want to just look at it. We've seen, so our urban areas, I'll give you an example. So we're a half hour outside of Toronto. Toronto might be the size of Chicago, let's say. So half hour outside Milton, Ontario. To buy a townhouse here is hard to do less than 700,000. So it could be that there's that spillover effect where people are coming, they're driving until they can afford it kind of thing. But to double prices in a year just doesn't seem sustainable in any way. We were heading up on a big run, low interest rates, high demand. I think that when we talk about Canada versus the US, what I've seen is we're getting a lot of the talent internationally coming here. I think our borders are a little more open. There's a little bit more happening here. Our unemployment was the lowest it's been in like 44 years before this COVID thing. So in that sense, the corporation of Canada was doing pretty well. But to double seems a little bit, I don't know where those numbers came from. If they just happened to take, they said all of Canada, that's what you heard?
It was the copy paste, man. And now,
wow.
We're hanging out, with the monk at the foot and the whole deal. And I wish I would have cited the source, but
yeah.
I grabbed it. We started jamming. And so I wanted to get the quote out so that there'd be a chronology for the prompt. But
I would say most parts of Canada,
crazy.
Yeah, most parts of Canada, about 5 to 7% a year. We've had a couple of double-digit years where, the right things have happened. And again, it's all demand. Like we're getting, a couple 100,000 people that are coming into Canada every year.
Right.
Skilled labor, like really good people coming into the country.
Yeah, and I was wondering maybe if that was one of those things where maybe something has doubled. Prices sounded a bit aggressive.
Maybe it's number of sales. Yeah, I don't know. It's
right.
All the builders are pumping out new products. People are buying them. There's lineups at where we are. People line up to get builder homes.
Would you say that traditionally Canada tends to sort of trend in favor or in kind to the lower 48?
Somewhat, I think so. So we have different banking practices, right? So our default rates now, I think, are like I don't know, I think yours are 10 or 11 times higher than Canadian default rates. I mean, what it sounds like in the US is there's, 200, 250 different banks. We've got 5 big ones, and they tend to be more conservative. So from a lending standpoint, I think we kind of play not to lose, whereas I think it's a little more aggressive in the sense of playing to win down in the US. So that's what I seem to see. There's obviously relations, right? I mean, there's a lot of trade in between the borders. I think when you're doing well, generally we're doing well. There's a currency exchange there. Probably, like, how have you been the last 2-3 years? Like, have you seen a run up on prices?
We've been rock and roll for.
Yeah, we've kind of been that way too, right? We had a little bit. There was a stress test introduced. Do you guys have anything like that in mortgages where they would almost qualify you based on a higher artificial rate than the actual rate? Have you experienced anything like that?
Not to that level of actual nuance. I think that's all sort of cooked in as medicine with the mashed potatoes, but like that actual element, I don't believe that's been introduced down here.
Yeah. So that's something we had. So even though you would pay, you get an interest rate at 3%, you would have to qualify for a 5% mortgage, which would essentially reduce your purchasing power by, 16%, something like that.
Sure.
Yeah. So things like that, I think, have kept us a kind of steady increase, not so kind of, maybe not the run up as quick and then the crash down. It's been much more steady climb. But yeah, I think for most of the world leading up to COVID, we've all been pretty good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's been no major signs of recession, although there are some underlying economic factors that always keep people scared, but that's the way it is, right?
So then maybe point blank, right, to kind of put the bow on it, right? So I think that's a beautiful sort of fluff of the pillow there, right? So as the head slaps, it's like, where are you guys at right now? What's true? And where do you see this now moving in the next 90 days?
So COVID, like I said, I think when people start to kind of not feel scared to go outside and to go see homes, I think real estate's probably going to be one of the first to recover. Because, for example, like sports, like we're not going to see sports until there's probably a vaccine for this thing. I mean, that's cooked. Concerts, those kind of things, like where there's large gatherings, it doesn't make sense.
Like non-essential, I know that word's getting blown out right now, but like categorically.
We're considered essential service in real estate. And I mean, open houses are banned where we are, so we're not allowed to do those.
Same game for us.
Yeah, I think the act of showing a house, buyers are going to start the process of recovery. I think that they're going to come before the listings come, because a listing is more risky because you don't know who's coming in your house, right? At least buyers can say, well, I know I'm not at risk, right? So it's a private showing. It's you plus a client. The risk there is even lower than if you had to get groceries. I don't know, some of the things, like when I go and get groceries, there's markers now on the floor. You can only go down the aisles one way. We're seeing things like that to kind of mitigate risk. But
same.
I think fundamentally is that going to see a house for sale is less risky than 50 other things I could list right now.
Well, I would push back on that just a little bit for sake of there being a fruit here. There's no question that there is a category. I'd be hesitant to put a percentage on it, even though all percentages are made up anyway, about the folks that we're going to sell that are sitting on the sideline strictly because of the health concern, right?
Right.
Person with the COVID's traipsing around, them getting sick. So, like, for example, even in our crew, some of the folks with pre-existing conditions, it's been well documented. If you're the older population, you're more susceptible. Like, so, categorically there are a couple of, but I'm actually seeing a lot of the other side also, which is everybody's always trying to time a real estate market from a seller perspective. And almost invariably, everybody gets it wrong in the sense that they get there too late. right? So it's like impossible to time it. Even if you timed it perfectly with like the first news coming as the shot over the bow that hits you right in the forehead that says, okay, it finally hit the top of the crest of the 10-year mark. It's time to go. That stat alone is already 30 to 45 to 60 days old, right? So it's literally impossible unless you're a broken clock that's still right twice a day kind of thing to time it. So I think in that respect, I'm seeing a lot of sellers that are trying like heck. They're knocking their poor mother-in-laws down flights of steps to get their name on the market right now because they feel like they're trying to place an insurance policy against something actually that's further to fall.
Yeah, I've heard clients say, I'd rather take the devil I know now than the devil I don't know in the future. I think most of us can agree it's temporary. And that's what we're seeing with us is that most sellers are not, accepting offers. I mean, there's buyers out there that are always willing to buy homes at half price, but most of the sellers are saying, look, like, unless I use it, like I'm using like a gift card analogy, right? Like if I had a $25 gift card to Target, let's say, how much would I sell that to you for? I mean, if I needed to get rid of it now, maybe $22, $23. I'm not going to give it to you for $10. And it's kind of the same thing, right? It's like there's inherent value in this real estate.
Why would you take a discount at all?
That's what I mean. If I wasn't motivated, then I'd hang on for my $25. But you know what I mean? If I had to get rid of it, if I needed liquid cash right now, and that's it. Some people before COVID, right? Before COVID, they bought a home. Now they need to sell. They're motivated sellers. They have a hard deadline that's coming up. I mean, we're trying to just let everyone know, if you don't have to sell, just let this blow over. I think where you'll start to see the activity, I don't know about you, but I've been looking at showings really close in our area, and it tracks almost exactly inverse with virus cases, right? So I think when we start to see that, the curve flatten, when we start to see things start to improve, you're going to start to see real estate showings just do the exact opposite. It'll start to get better as there's less and less cases.
What's true for us down here, Chuck, is right out of the gate, when the you-know-what hit the fan, cancellations were like, it was like wildfire.
Cancellations of listings.
Cancellations of open escrows.
Okay.
So there's the immediate hit of like, we were going to do it, something changed, we're not doing that anymore.
Right.
Then there was the cancellations, to kind of use it a little bit out of turn, of folks that were like 10 out of 10 with the gas pedal, that were like, whoa. They weren't in escrow yet. They were active, but they were kind of back off a little bit, right? And I'm speaking chiefly right now to what I believe is the oxygen of this entire conversation of real estate, which is the buyer demand, right? So buyer demand, right? Seller would still love to get rid of that property they were in escrow with. They don't want the fallout, right? So then the second category was like people kind of backing off a little bit. And I think that the crazy one right now, which is unquantifiable, at least, if you've got an idea about how to quantify, I'd love to hear it, is the failure to launch group, right?
Yes.
The 35-year-olds living out of the basement of mom's house. In this metaphoric analogy, it's the idea that I was about to become a buyer or seller, but I'm not even raising my hand yet. Right. So organically, I would have by now already started the process. Like in those three camps, camp number one, crazy attrition across, like boom, anvil on the big toe style.
Yeah.
And everybody, right, reflectively. But the interesting thing, though, is that middle group came back with a vengeance. Like the buyer demand right now is hot. Now it's weird, because it's obviously not 100% capacity, because there's a whole group, like, what are we at, like 30% unemployment right now or something, right? So those cats ain't buying homes, right? Then there's another group that lost 30% in the stock market. Maybe they lost their down payment. They're not buying a home, right? And then there's just the economic uncertainty group. Maybe they might get furloughed here soon enough, right? They're not comfortable buying a home. So there's a huge categorical percentage representation of the whole that shouldn't be buying a home. But you wouldn't know it right now. When you wake up in the morning, you got 4 or 5 cats that want to get out and see properties.
Yeah.
The gumption in that group, it's not just like, I'm going to dip a toe. It's like, dude, let's go. Right? Are you kind of seeing that same thing? Like almost like a big rebound already, even though there's so much uncertainty still around us?
Not as much. I would say in our area, what we're seeing is, and this is, I predicted there'd be 25% of people, like way back in early March. I said, look, 25% of buyers are going to sit on the sidelines, 25% of sellers. We've seen about 60% of both, but it's happened in an even ratio. So if you look at, because that's what markets are, it's a ratio between supply and demand. And so the way we measure that is the number of new listings coming in the market and then the number of sales, which is how many are exiting successfully. So we're actually the same ratio, but we're 60% lower than we should be this time of year based on, yeah, I mean, like I said, we're getting a couple of buyers here and there that say, oh, you just listed that home for 1.2 million, I'll give you 900. It's like, well,
Right.
no, go buy a 900 home because you're not going to get this one for that price. But no, it's been, I would say like most of our listings now, what used to be, the way I'm describing is like if you get 2 showings a week now, that's almost like 8 to 10 showings of the old way, right? Because the tire kickers are gone. I know what we're doing now and what a lot of brokerages are doing is when I go to book a showing on a property, I've only done maybe 4 or 5 showings in the last month, but they send you a questionnaire, you've got to fill it out. Like you really have to jump through hoops to get into this house,
Right.
you know, liability waivers and those kind of things. And so it's kicked all of the, I think some of it, it's like people talk a big game, but are they really ready to write the check, right? There may be a lot of, questions. Anytime real estate markets shift, people see it as potentially an opportunity. But yeah, the numbers that we've seen, especially in the last 2 weeks, is that buyer activity is down about 60%, listing activity is down about 60%, and then showings are down about 70%. So it tracks a little bit different. Yeah.
Big numbers, man. You know, you just reminded me, actually, I pulled this up right before hitting the records. Can you see that?
I can, yeah.
So, I mean, check this out, dude. This is, and so just a backdrop here. So here's our local board here. You know, they kick out the stats every month. So here's March, right? And they do a little primer here talking about the COVIDs. But check this out, just as a snapshot.
Okay.
You know, down 32.5% inventory.
Okay, inventory, yeah.
Yeah, homes for sale. Up 7% median. And then, closings down a little bit. Now, you look at that. I'll even put it as a question, right? Back to the foot of the monk here. Like, if you just rubbed your eyes 5 times, you clicked your toes, you forgot everything was going on inside your own little vacuum, what would you think if you saw that?
It's a little puzzling and fascinating. I mean, the truth is that, I mean, even the month of March, so this is March. So, I mean, for us, March 1st to 15th, it was gangbusters. Like it was going crazy. And then, the 15th to 30th, whole other game. It's like when the tide goes out, you get to see who's wearing pants. I could see the first and third one, but the middle one is very interesting. The median sales price, which obviously is different than an average sales price. I would have to know more about the makeup of your market, how many luxury homes are selling versus starter homes.
Right.
I know when we've looked at the showing activity in the last couple of weeks, it's definitely skewed towards like I broke it down into 3 pieces. Like the market has like a lower third, a middle third, and a top third. Top third is quiet. Like there's almost no showings, but definitely in the first and second thirds, there's a lot of activity. Like that's where the bulk of the action is starter stuff, right? First time buyers, the things that were really moving before are still moving.
Yeah.
So
even on this too, actually here, that you just reminded me of something here. I hate it when you get showstoppers trying to figure out what the hell, is that it right there? Attached? Damn it.
Average sales price?
Yeah, the attached went gnarls.
Okay.
Which, is that it right there?
Percentage for original list price, days on market.
I hate this. I'm going to get lost right now. I'm screwing it up. Anyway, Trust me when I say that the attached was, whatever. It was in there somewhere. It was one of the ones that went like this, doing at the end of it.
Yeah.
Right, which is exactly to your point, right? Like the starter and the mid is, I think, a lot of where that gumption that I was sharing with you earlier is coming from. And, to a large degree, it makes sense. Like, as long as you've got the financial security, right? Like there's being food secure, right? Like, your meal's going to come from tonight.
Mm-hmm.
There's like the job front secure, right? You're gainfully employed, that whole thing moving forward. Economic, there's a bunch of stuff that kind of gets wrapped in, to that category as well. But as long as you've got a general assurance in those, categories, right? Those key leading indicators, you're actually seeing this not just like a bargain hunter opportunity, like you were talking about earlier, the guy 1.2 wants it for 9. There's a whole nother narrative too, which was February, you were getting your forehead kicked in by the boot of 10 offers in the first weekend. Most of the homes going to folks that had deep pockets, big, huge down payments, were willing to waive their appraisal contingencies or whatever. So it's like, there could be a narrative that's like, okay, it might get a little bit worse. Maybe I'm buying this and it goes down in value a little bit. Maybe course correct, maybe a little recession. All that stuff could be on the table. But you're looking at it with a long enough vista and horizon, and you're actually seeing it as an opportunity, because where there was 10 offers before, maybe there's only you and one other guy.
Right.
And so that entry level thing. But then conversely, one of those 7 deals that canceled that I told you right out of the gate, instant attrition, that was an all cash La Jolla guy for $2 million, right? So he was like, well, hold on, right? Is this thing still going to be worth $2 million when the whole dust shakes out? So we were the first ones to be like, hey man, you want to cancel on this? Like, we were leading that narrative, because we, of course, we're always playing the long game just like you guys are. But that's what's interesting too. You look at this snapshot. This looks like an insane, deft seller market. Inventory down, in this regard. I know you kind of blink your eyes 3 times because you're looking at medians. Medians a little tricky. And this is just homes, for sale, which there's a whole bunch that's kind of cooked into that too. It's impossible to put a entire market into 3 numbers like that. But I think that what's happening here, and I can get out of the shares now, what's happening here, I think, is that March is going to be vastly different already than what February was, to your point earlier, but it's going to be like ridiculous once we start getting April and May stats, when we should be ramping up right now for, late spring, early summer market, which is always our best down here in sunny San Diego. Ding, right? It's going to be like, bro, hold on to your hat with these stats. And we haven't even talked about the whole lending stuff going on down here, which maybe you guys are a little bit insulated from with how you guys do mortgages.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of layers to it. I think even the way our government, they've rolled out 5 or 6 different programs to help people. We just heard one where commercial tenants are going to get, 50% of their rent essentially paid, provided the landlord gives the extra 25. So it's a 75% subsidy. Things that normally would have sat in debate for like years have been just rolled out fast, right? Like super fast. I've heard some programs in the US, they rolled them out and said, well, we're out of money, right? I mean, it seems like we've done a pretty good job in Canada of just kind of rolling these. I know we're going to pay for it down the road. It's a lot of money being thrown everywhere to try and have where, the main street doesn't shut down and those kind of things. I think it's a price point thing. So communities further away from us. Remember I said, like a townhouse is $700,000. Our average price is about $800,000 in Milton. And we're a suburban town, 130,000 people. I looked at your prices, your median price for attached housing, $450,000. Sunny San Diego, it's beautiful. And I have heard in the communities further away where the price is lower, they're starting to see madness too. So I think I've had this theory that most families, $100,000 income is a good income for most families. In Canada, you qualified about 5 times your income. Before that stress test I talked about was about 7 times. But I think that there's something to be said for that kind of $500,000, $600,000 price range, where that's the sticking point, I think, where most people don't want to go past. In our community, they kind of have to, but we've also seen a good run up in prices. So they usually get into a condo. 5 years later, the condo is worth $150,000 more. Right. And then that's their skin in the game that gets them to the next step, right? So they're kind of playing with house money in that sense. But I think that's probably, I bet your price point is probably affecting the way that people are really attacking your market. Because that's it. It's the higher range is just slow right now. It's just, those are the people that, like you said, they can afford to wait and see how this is going to go. Like older people selling to older people, to me, is not happening as much as like the young people just trying to get in somewhere. Or the investors, right? People that just say, well, looks like a good opportunity.
Well said, said well. So put a little title on it here. So can you come up with can I put the marketing genius on the spot and come up with a one sentence title about, I mean, you can even title it what you want. You could say, you know, you could go 101, say, how's the market?
Yeah, this too shall pass. I really think we have to remember the underlying factors that are still at work for you. You know, obviously there's demand there, and it's all those, like for us, low interest rates, right? High demand, low supply. We even have land that's locked outside of our area that the province and government has said you can't build here because it's all green belts. And so we almost have these geographical factors that cause price inflations where we are. Similar, Vancouver's another market like that in Canada, where there's mountains on either side. It's like you can't build there, right? Maybe you can. When I fly over California, I see a lot of homes up in the mountains. But this too shall pass. The underlying factors are still at work. And when people start feeling safe, that's when things start to really turn around.
Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing anyway. Yeah.
I would say,
and in the meantime, I would say the secondary title is don't inject yourself with hand sanitizer. That's never a good idea. Am I right? I mean, wow. A lot of us are looking at your country. If I don't want to turn this into politics, but we just kind of like, we scratch our heads and go, oh, okay, that's a bit odd.
There's a lot of us down here, brother.
Anyway, yeah.
I would say the title for me would be, you know, our oxygen is always going to be the stats, but it's like, man, be careful which stats you're actually looking at right now if you're trying to carry those forward to be the leading indicators to make your decisions off of. And I would say be doubly cautious, double down on, you know, the media that's coming at you right now too. Like case in point, we had our local rag here, Union Tribune, San Diego, front page of the real estate deal. I don't know, this is 2 weeks back, whatever. And it said, it was like big 72 bold face Arial font, just like soaked up all the ink. And it was just basically, like, if you squint your eyes, it was like doom and gloom, right?
Right.
Remember exactly what the hell they used. And what they cited was, they cited the fact that mortgage applications were down like some absurd amount from the week before, right? So it's like, if you just read that and then you read that stat, so like title, subtitle, and you make your decision based on that, because who the hell's got time for all that small stuff in the columns underneath, right?
Right.
And you take it out of context, you think the sky is falling. But the nuance of that was the week before was when we had the lowest rates have ever been recorded since they started tracking it in the mortgage-backed security market. It actually got down to 3. If you threw a little money at it, you get under 3 for a 30-year fix, which was insane. So every single homeowner in America put a refi application in, and the rate jammed up to like 4.5, like within 48 hours.
Right.
So of course, mortgage applications were, you get what I'm saying?
Of course.
It's like, you look at those stats I was just showing you right there, kind of maybe in a different capacity, but just there's numbers right now. They tell the truth to a degree, but they work best when they work in lockstep with trends. And you can adjust the nuance, like a Tiger Woods swing between an 8 or a 9 or a 9 out of 10 out of 10. Mm-hmm. You can adjust there and make definitive elements accordingly. But when there's big stuff going on like this, you got to be really careful about putting too much vestige into those numbers. Would you agree with that?
Well, especially March. So the example when I talk about average pricing and when you kind of lump things together, is that you get this effect where, if you had a body and half of it was in the oven and half was in the fridge, you'd say, well, the average body temperature is just perfect, right? But it's a very poor indicator of the actual health of that the body.
Well said.
And that's what it is. The first half of March was on fire, and the second half cooled down, and there was an adjustment period. I think when we get the stats for April, that'll be the more true sense of what's actually happened. But the newspaper it's like, if it bleeds, it leads. So what's more exciting to say, is the mortgage applications are up or the sky is falling? It's people in media love to attach themselves to. I mean, I've been looking, like, there's been talk of bubbles in Canada for 20 years, and eventually they're going to be right. Right. But it's like, it's just, when you have nothing else to say, you just say something like that, things are bad. Shifts do provide opportunities. And I think the worst case scenario now we're seeing with sellers is probably about a 5% drop in prices. Those are those guys, like I said, that are motivated, that have to sell. But in some cases, we're seeing sales at the same numbers as we did back in February. There's been no change. And in fact, some of them have even pushed the numbers up a bit. So when markets shift for us, what we're seeing is there's a different spread, right? Is that, whereas you could kind of say, okay, a townhouse might sell between, in a $10,000 or $20,000 range. What we're seeing now is it might go to like $50,000. Is there's more swing between. And it's mostly motivation, right? It's mostly how bad do they need to get rid of this place.
Right. The old comp bomb that we all experienced in, what was that, 08, 09, I don't know.
Yeah.
Never what hit the where. It's that Warren Buffett analogy, right? It's like, the tide's up, everybody looks like they're swimming, they're all having a good time. And to a buyer, you're looking at this purview, and everybody looks the same. There's a homogeny to it, right? You don't have the X-ray goggles. That tide goes out. If there was 10 sellers out there before, as you said, what did you say the attrition was for your volume out there for sellers?
About 60. So 60% less listings new coming out. There's still the stuff that was there before, and then you have about 60% down on overall sales.
Right. So it's always going to be that gradient there as you kind of slough through the stuff that was already out there. But let's just say that where there was 10 before, there's only 4 out there now. One of those 4 financially secure, would still like to sell, doesn't actually need to, so they're hanging on. So that leaves 3. Maybe 2 of those people are sketch, but all it takes is 1. And that 1 that goes out, it's got no sconies on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No sconies on, hanging out there. Everybody's looking, they're laughing, they're pointing, they're taking pictures. It's cold water. The scenario,
Yeah.
And it's like, boom. And that 1.2, has to take what they can get. And then it's comp bomb style, and then panic ensues. Appraisers don't want to hit the numbers anymore because they want to CYA against their bank. Buyers are all sketched out because they feel like that's the new waterline mark for the whole neighborhood. And then the capitulation ensues. So
yeah, it's one bad sale. A market's only as good as its last few sales, right? I mean, that's the nature of it. But you hope that enough of them are still going to hold out that you can say, well, that one became the outlier versus the new norm.
And when things are going up, that's an easy conversation to have. But when there's economic uncertainty and there's the fear that things are going down, that doesn't just become an outlier. It becomes the fear monger of where everything is heading.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially to the neighbors, the 20 neighbors around that house. Right. Yeah. So it's a real interesting time. And then you overlay that with people's thoughts around, like, how scared am I? I mean, there's people now that seem to think, well, who cares? Like that herd immunity kind of camp, right? And unfortunately, that's become a red-blue issue, south of the border where you are, versus like, I'm not even going to leave my house because I'm so scared. Like, everybody fits into some dynamic there, is that there's a comfort spot for everybody. And it's not all a one size fits all, right? Nobody's kind of right in the middle. And it's situational. Like I said, I might feel like showings to me are not a big risk. somebody else does. You know, I had a client who decided today, he's like, I want to see this home. And then he called me an hour later and said, actually, I don't want to see it. I'm too nervous about things. So it can change by the hour too, you know, perception, depending on what headline you read last, right? Yeah. But I think we all just need to be responsible and just kind of say, okay, look, you know, it's okay to feel. Everything moves, right? Like in nature, you know, you have, you know, yesterday it was windy, today it's not, right? And even the way people feel, I know this isn't real estate related, but I know you have a group of people you work with, and, you know, sometimes they have bad days, sometimes they have good days, and it's okay, right? I mean, it's natural to ebb and flow. And, you know, I think we just need to kind of remember to support each other too. That's the main thing. I mean, this has the opportunity to divide people or bring them together. And I just hope that more people choose to kind of bring it together.
Well, I don't know how better to put a ribbon on it than that right there. So
yeah,
Chuck Charlton, you know, real estate guru up north of the border. And if you're moving to Milton, now, you know, you look for the purple backdrop with the matching coat and that smile right there that'll last for days. Hey, deadly DJ too. We'll have to hit on that next time together, brother. Appreciate you hanging out.
All right. Thanks, Jesse.
You bet, man. All right, brother. I promised only a little bit of time out of you. So, you know, I think you and I could bullshit to our heart's desire.
I think
and it
so.
also is cool, you know, that we haven't talked in a long time and pick up just feeling like we're extending a conversation over a beer from yesterday too.
Totally.
By the way, quick little fun fact here. This is the last little deal I'll do. I think.
What is this?
Can you see that? That's my cover shot of you. No, you can't see it.
Is that when we were together at the bar?
It's you and I at the bar.
Yeah.
That one day where then we went back to the crib and we spun records in my basement.
Yeah. That was great.
All time.